Hello everyone, this is Riya Banerjee and the topic for today is The Little Inspiration. The Little Inspiration is a chapter from the book of Rachnasagar, class 6, and the story is really and truly an inspiring one of a courageous child, Helen Keller. You may have heard about Helen Keller early as she became a marvelous character, and later on in her life she devoted her life for the education of others. Okay, so let's read about her. Let's understand her journey throughout the problems of her life to a new chapter in her life. Okay, so this is an inspiring story of a courageous child, Helen Keller, who was both blind and deaf since childhood. Her teacher, Anne Sullivan, devoted her life to teaching her, and with her help, Helen overcame all trials and obstacles to become an inspiration for the world. So we are going to read about such a marvelous person. So let's read and rejoice. Before she was 2 years old, a serious illness damaged Helen Keller's sight and hearing. Her illness was diagnosed by the doctors as an acute congestion of the stomach and brain. So, before she turned 2 years of her life, a serious illness damaged her eyes and her ears. Okay, it damaged her capability of eyesight and the hearing ability. Her illness was diagnosed by the doctors as an acute means a severe congestion. It means an abnormal accumulation of fluid in the body part, okay, of the stomach and the brain. She was suffering from the both. The illness did not last for a very long time. Although the illness did not last, but the consequences followed. It means that it left her senses of hearing and sight damaged for a lifetime. So this all things happened when she was only 2 years old. At that time, the only person she could communicate with was Martha Washington, the 6-year-old daughter of the family cook. So, who was Martha Washington? Martha Washington was the family cook's daughter, 6-year-old daughter, and she was able to communicate with the help of a sign language. So, let's have a look. Who was able to create a sign language with her? By the age of 7, she had over 60 different signs to communicate with her family. If she wanted bread, she pretended to be cutting off loaf. So in that way, she used to communicate with others and inform them that she is hungry. If she wanted to eat ice cream, she would hug her shoulder and shiver. So in this way, she started communicating with the other family members using the sign languages. And she almost at the age of 7 had already started learning 60 different signs to communicate. Helen was a very bright child. She got very frustrated because she couldn't talk. Of course, it's definitely going to happen with the person. She became very angry and began to throw temper tantrums. Now, what are temper tantrums? Temper tantrums means temperament. Okay, she started demonstrating violently her frustration, her anxiousness, everything she started having. And the family knew that they had to do something to help her out. It was absolutely coming from her health, from her situation. She got frustrated. Next, in 1886, her mother was inspired by an account in famous writer Charles Dickens' American Notes. So her mother in 1886 was inspired by the famous novelist Charles Dickens' American Notes on the successful education of another deaf-blind child, Laura Bridgman, and traveled to a specialist in Baltimore for advice. So, her mom got inspired by a famous novel writer's story or novel, that is American Notes, and she took her child to a specialist in the Baltimore. And Baltimore is the name of a place. Okay. Next, let's have a look. He helped her contact the local expert, Alexander Graham Bell, who was working with the deaf children at the time. So he got help from Alexander Graham Bell. Well, we know who he is, right? Next, Bell advised Helen's parents to contact the Perkins Institute for the Blind. Underline this one, the Perkins Institute for the Blind, the school where Bridgman, means Laura Bridgman, had been educated, which was then located in South Boston, Massachusetts. Well, we have to understand that this is absolutely based on England, so the places would be similar to that. Anne Sullivan, a former student of the school, was then a teacher there. She herself was visually impaired and then only 20 years old. So, her mom decided to help her out, and in that she met Alexander Graham Bell also. Alexander Graham Bell suggested or advised his mom and his father to contact the Perkins Institute for the Blind, where the school was located off Laura Bridgman, and they were hopeful that someday the things would be different. Anne Sullivan, who was a former student of the school, was then a teacher, and she herself was visually impaired and her age was only 20 at that time. She was asked to become Helen Keller's teacher. She was the best person to understand Helen's feelings. Helen needed not only a teacher but also a good friend. It was just the beginning of a 49 years long relationship. So, we can well understand that Anna Sullivan, being visually impaired herself, realized the condition of Helen Keller, and she helped her out to eradicate the problem she was in. One day, Anne led Helen to the water pump in the garden and pumped water on her hand. She spelled the letters WATER as the water ran over Helen's tender hand. She repeated this several times. At last, Helen realized that the word water means the water which she felt pouring over her hand. This opened up a whole new world for her. So, if the question is asked, what opened a whole new world for her? It could be that understanding the word water, WATER, with the water, the material water that we generally take. She was suddenly filled with excitement and ran all around the place asking Anne the names of different things. And Anne would spell the words in her hand just the way water was written, WATER. She was wondering all about the places and she wanted to know the names of different things. And Anne Sullivan was continuously writing the names on Helen Keller's hand to let her understand. This was the key which unlocked the world for her. In this way, she started learning English language as well. She eventually stopped throwing tantrums. She certainly stopped misbehaving with other people. Helen learned to read Braille. Braille is a script we already know which is used for the visually impaired people to let them understand English language and different languages as well. This was a system of raised dots representing letters. A blind person could read by feeling the dots. Helen learned slowly but steadily. So Braille is all about a system of raised dots where the person who is studying Braille would be able to touch it and understand. When she went to college, Anne went with her and tapped out the words of the instructors on Helen's hand. Helen had a remarkable memory and she also had an amazing skill which very few people have ever been able to develop. She could put her fingers on a person's lips and understand the words which were being spoken. So, as she was blind, she was not able to hear properly, so she needed some method to understand. First one was understanding the letters through her skin. Second was with the help of the braille, and the third, the amazing capability along with remarkable memory which she had, she could touch on someone's lip and she was able to understand the words which were being spoken. So in this way you can also try at home and try if you are able to understand the words or not without being spoken. While she was in college, she wrote her book called The Story of My Life. So she was in college and she wrote the book The Story of My Life. With the money earned from the book, she was able to buy a house. She became famous and traveled all around the world, speaking to groups of people and inspiring them, of course. She met many important and well known people as she traveled. Helen Keller was successful because of her determination, and she owed a lot to Anne Sullivan, who is an unsung hero. Okay, so Anne Sullivan was there with her for 49 long years. Okay, and she finally, I'm talking about Helen Keller, she finally realized that Helen Keller, being blind and deaf, could be such an inspiring person for others. And she started becoming famous, she traveled all around the world, and she inspired many people, okay, with the story of her life. So students, I think that's all we have done. It was all there in this chapter in your book. We will continue with few more chapters, and if you need the question answers, let me know about it. I will share. Bye.